Hey, shalom, everybody. Shalom. Welcome to the Way Remnant. I'm Jeff Brannon. Guys, tonight I am so excited. I have Dr. Douglas Hamp back in the green room right now, getting ready to come on. Look, I want to tell you, two authors. Look, I'm so impressed with Dr. Douglas Hamp. He has got some amazing books. We're going to be talking about a lot of our book catalogs that kind of overlap together. We both talk about the days of Noah. Jesus said that the last days would be like the days of Noah, and we take that and kind of go into a story format and do some teaching without knowing that you're being taught to. So I love how he does this, but I'm going to go ahead and bring him on, and we're going to get to it, guys. We have so much to talk about tonight, and I hope that you enjoy this program. Dr. Hamp, thank you so much for coming on the Way Remnant tonight.
So glad to be here. Thanks, Jeff.
Amen. Amen. I want to tell you, I just want to pop these up real quick, just so our people can have this. If they want to find your books, I just went to Amazon, and I think that may be one of the best places to go to. And when you go there, you can check out all your books. And man, you have a ton of books. I tell you, I'm trying to catch up to you, brother. I think I have maybe I'm just about to publish my 9th one. I'm working on it. It's a book on tongues. I'm going through the proof copy right now, making sure. You always find stuff, right? And but
always find stuff. Always. Yep.
Either one of us or where our mutual friend Doug Krieger is at. Oh my gosh, he has like a zillion books. Oh my gosh, but you have a massive catalog of books. I love your series on corrupting the image. You have the Millennial Chronicles. You have so much, and we're gonna talk about that tonight. But guys, if you haven't gone there, go to Amazon.com. Look up Doug Hamp, Dr. Douglas Hamp. And you can also go check out his YouTube channel. And that's right here, guys. You guys, if you haven't subscribed over there, please go subscribe over at Dr. Hamp's channel. He has a lot of great content. And I wanted to start off with this tonight, Doug. I know we have limited time, so I'm going to be running.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the new content that you're putting out. Oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
So many times we see people coming in and they're just wanting to argue and grab each other, and your new content is just as a pastor, I love it. And now, can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe some of the thought behind the direction shift.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of years arguing about stuff, and I used to think that having more information. Sorry, my cat decided that right now was the time that she needed to.
I have Kinsley right here. Hope you can tell. I've got Kinsley right here.
Come on, kitty. There we go.
I love it.
Make a decision. All right. All right. Too funny. You gotta love cats. But anyway, when I started the Way congregation, I was a bit naive. I thought I'm just gonna do Jesus on Saturday, and before I knew it, I was embroiled in all these different debates. And I'm like, how did I get here? I didn't want to argue about the calendar. I didn't want to argue about lunar Sabbath. I didn't even know it was a thing. Of course, it was completely blindsided by the whole flat earth nonsense and how we're going to argue about his name. And look, we can have those discussions. That's fine. Sure. But I think we were starting to miss what really matters. And, and then you run into the Torah terrorists, and then everyone else is going to hell, and they're the only people that have it all figured out. And I'm like, man, I'm still believing in God's grace 100%. Right. Yeah. I am not going to get to the other side based on my works, based on my goodness, based on my performance of Torah. Not at all. And we're missing the bigger picture, and that's one reason I wrote this book. I started seeing this. You mentioned Doug Krieger. I remember I was driving to Northern California. I had my kids in the back seat, and we were on the phone, and I had been seeing these things in scripture. And so I was sharing them with him very cautiously, because I thought he's going to throw me under the bus. He's going to think I'm a heretic.
I've had that happen.
Friends
like, oh, you lost it, Jeff.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm kind of seeing these things about the house of Israel and the house of Judah. He's like, me too. I'm like, really? Seriously? And he's like, yeah. And then we started talking, and we talked and talked and talked, and we just could not get enough traction on this whole idea of the Commonwealth of Israel, and both of us got stuck in Ephesians chapter 2, where Paul is talking about you once Gentiles are now part of the Commonwealth of Israel, your fellow citizens, and blew us away. We're like, how did we miss this? You know, and I think for Christianity, orthodoxy versus orthopraxy, but you know, whether you have the right doctrines, that has kind of been our litmus test, you know. And I want to see your statement of faith on the back of your bulletin, and if it's correct, then you're going to heaven, and if it's not,
if you're off by one little thing, throw them out. That's how it is today. Yeah.
But it's been that way roughly, you know, for the last 2,000 years, at least certainly since the reformers, you know, this idea that you have to have the proper doctrine or you are just a heretic and you're toast, right?
Right.
And, you know, how we got there is a whole nother discussion. Obviously, it has to do with a lot of Catholic doctrine, and then it has to do with other doctrines. And, you know, Calvin was no better. Let's be quite frank about that.
Yeah. But I found that I've got a book called The Rise of Marcion, The Fall of the Faithful. I know you talk about Marcion. I go through and I talk about Simon Magus, Nicholas. I talk about Cerinthus. No one talks about Cerinthus, and man, you know, and so I love how I think you have a series called Haunted Theology, and and man, I think this type of material really needs to get out there. I have a little a Methodist lady that I do. I'm a handyman also. I was doing some work for her. I gave her that book, and she was just blown away. She's been taking it to all of her little Methodist friends and everything. She's like, "Look at this," you know. And
that's so cool. Yeah,
I think that when we write these things down, I think it helps because there's some people that are never on YouTube. They're not on some of the social medias, and a book format is still a very good format to get these things out. I love the book that you guys wrote with Commonwealth Theology. That I was looking for that as a pastor. I was looking for, okay, I'm not replacement theology. I'm not this. I'm not. What am I? And then like, oh, this is good.
Yeah, that was quite a tome, you know. And well, so that's why I kind of redid it in this one, where it's a lot more story based.
Yes,
I'm not getting in there. It's not polemic. I'm not trying to do flashy theology. I'm just saying, look, this is a story, guys. This is what it is. This is what we've missed, you know. And I just think it's so simple, right? When we get down to it, because let's frame it. How have we heard about the God of the Old Testament? Well, he's kind of cold. He's very demanding. He's kind of like that HR guy. He's got the clipboard, checking your performance. You know, hey, we need to have a performance review because you're not doing so hot. And if you don't shape up, we're going to have to fire you from the company. That's how we imagine the God of the Old Testament. And then Jesus comes by. He's got the hippie dreadlocks, you know, and he's just like, it's all cool, bro. You know, and I'm free from that old system, you know. And that's how people are looking at this. That's how they've been seeing the difference. But when you see that it's the same God, it's the same love story. It's just that there was a major break and we've forgotten about the divorce.
Yes.
You know, why we did, I don't know, but we did. And we missed it. And that's where Krieger and I were just humming and hawing. We're just like, how did we miss this whole thing of God's divorce and God putting the two houses back together, you know? And man,
Paul talks about it. He says, this is a great mystery. Yeah. And when I was still in dispensationalism, I would read that. I'm like, this is a mystery. I still don't understand it.
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about here, Paul.
And I think you nailed it with Marcion. And by the way, you beat me to writing a book about that. I have one. It's on my to-do list. Okay, I've already mapped it out, but I can't crank them out quite that fast. But you know, but it's such an important topic, and the church at large has generally never heard of Marcion. And of course, they would deny profusely that they actually agree with Marcion. And they're like, well, the early church was trying to stamp him out. For those that actually know about it.
And that's what's taught in seminaries, right? That's what's taught. It's all been stamped
out. They were trying to stamp him out. But here's the really scary part. They failed, you know.
Absolutely.
Irenaeus and Tertullian and Justin Martyr, they failed. They ultimately failed in their attempts to stamp out Marcionism. It's kind of like if Mormon doctrine became standard Christianity. And when you say I'm a Christian, you really mean Mormon. That's kind of what happened. And there was this encounter between, I forget the guy's names, but it was around the 5th century. They're up at the Tigris River, and one of them just crossed the Tigris River, and he's telling the other guy, or the other guy asked him, "Are you a Christian?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm actually a Christian and a Jew." And the other guy is like freaking out, like, "What?
Yep.
How can you be both?" He's like,
Right.
"Well, I believe in Jesus, and I'm Jewish." And he's like, "Oh, well, where I'm from, when you say Christian, you really mean Marcionite. And so it's
Right.
impossible to be a Christian and a Jew at the same time."
Oh,
And sadly,
it's that split.
Marcionism has
Mhm.
become the de facto version of Christianity.
It
And
has.
look, I'm not saying people are pagan. I'm not saying they're going to hell. I'm not saying any of
Absolutely.
that stuff. I
Right.
think they love Jesus with all their hearts. I
Yes.
really do.
Yes.
However,
And when they say Jesus, they are meaning Yeshua. That's the
yes,
same thing.
yes.
I get people today saying, "Oh, Jesus is a pagan god. It's a false god." Look, no. We're talking about the same person.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. So much.
Yeah,
infight.
exactly. But to be fair, the Marcionistic doctrine was anti-Torah,
It was.
anti-Sabbath,
Yeah.
anti-Jewish. I mean, that's essentially. And when you hear a
Yeah.
pastor get up and they say, "Well, Paul says,"
Mhm.
Paul is our teacher. Paul
Yeah.
is the one who establishes doctrine for the church.
Right.
And when I hear those kinds of things, especially from the rightly dividing the word of truth camp, but a lot of people fall into that at varying degrees. And
Right.
what they're doing is they're parroting Paul, excuse me, they're parroting Marcion, not Paul.
Yeah.
They're parroting
Right.
Marcion about Paul.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they read Paul, they've been given these Marcionite glasses and they don't realize
Absolutely.
it. And so they think, "Oh, Paul was contrary." I've been following Dr. Bart Ehrman, right? And he's kind of parroting some of those same things, that
Yeah.
Paul and Jesus were teaching different things. Man, I've heard that so many times.
It's what
But
was.
they
It was.
weren't.
It's what as Doug. I've not been. I don't have the education that you have, but I did. I did grow up as a minister, and I parroted what was given to me in dispensationalism. I parroted what I learned from my teachers, my senior pastors, and things like this. And I don't think it was a malicious attempt to deceive people. I think we've just been handed these lies.
Mhm. Exactly. I totally agree with that. Because you start hearing people like, "Well, they lied to us." It's like, well, they were lied to, right? We were all lied to. And I think
Absolutely.
ultimately we have to pin it on the devil, right? I mean, he's
Yeah,
the one. Certainly Marcion was a huge problem, right? He
it
was a
was.
huge problem. But where he got it, I don't know. But we can blame the devil for sure. We can blame
Yeah,
Satan ultimately for
yeah.
getting us stuck in this Marcionistic trap. And so here's the decision we have to make as Christians, as pastors, as leaders. Are we going to continue down that same path, or are we going to take the red pill, swallow the hard pill, and actually decide to see reality for what it is? And the moment we do that, man, it becomes so much simpler. The Bible is simplified. We don't have to, keep, well, that was the Old Testament, that was for the Jews, now this is for us. And it's
Right.
simple. And some days you're just like, what are people so afraid of? Taking a day
Yeah.
off? What's the problem? What's the problem with taking a day off or having a
Oh
few
man.
more parties in your life? I mean, they're just
Yeah.
parties. It's not a big deal. Even for Yom Kippur, we find a way to eat, right? We ate before, we eat after, right? But
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
fast in between. And
Yeah.
it's one of the healthiest things I've ever done. Not just physically. I mean, I think it's really good for my body to
Sure.
just have a break. You need to turn off your computer every once in a while just to
You do.
reset it, right? You need
Yeah.
to reset your phone every so often. Well, you need to reset your body so often. And it's just healthy for you. But it also is like kind of this deep cleanse for your soul.
Yeah.
And there's something weird about it. When we go through the we go through the Yom Kippur service before it
Mhm.
begins, and the Kol Nidre, right? And we're listing every possible sin imaginable.
Right.
There's something really good about it. It's like a deep,
Mhm.
deep cleanse for your soul. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. I certainly did that one. And you're like, what? Wait, is that like? Oh, yeah, I did that too, right? And I'm like, yeah, I probably did all of those this past
Yeah.
year. And it's kind of cool to just get it out there and just say, Lord, I did it. And
I
when
think
you think
it's so
about it,
cool that it. Go ahead.
well,
I'm sorry.
one of the biggest ironies is, Christians think that Jews don't understand grace. And yet, what is the book that you read at Yom Kippur? The book of
Hmm.
Jonah, right? The book
That's
of
it.
Jonah, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
God says, I want you to go to Nineveh. This is this nasty, terrible place where they were absolutely deserving of God's judgment.
Yeah.
And God shows mercy upon them because they
He
repent.
does.
And
Yeah.
Jonah is the
Has a
one who
fit.
wants them to get nuked, right?
Yeah. He's a Torah terrorist. There we go.
He was.
I think it's so cool because in the feast days we see something cyclical. You know, in Pesach, Passover, we're getting ready for unleavened bread, and we're going through and trying to find all the leaven. And look, you know, when I first did it, I was so ignorant. I'm throwing out so much stuff that I probably didn't need to throw out of my house, right? Because we all go through that. But when we really start looking at the heart of the matter, God, we still need to do the physical, but God is really wanting us to look at that in our heart. Jeff, where's that leaven that you have kind of tucked away there that you know, that's that secret sin, kind of talking about what you're doing at Yom Kippurim, the same thing. And then over and over again, God just cycles that throughout the year just to bring us back to that humble place where Paul says, search out your own soul salvation with fear and trembling. I think that's kind of the idea. Oh, I love that.
You know what changed? Like, it just changed my whole mindset for me. I used to do Sabbath for God because I thought, well, I want to please my Father. I need to keep the Sabbath to kind of get the point, you know. And when I finally realized, it's crazy how long it took me to understand this fully. And I see many Christians still don't get it. It's kind of like, well, I want to hear Jesus say, well done. And I do. But the reason he gave me Torah wasn't to keep me on the straight and narrow, but he gave me Torah for my blessing. And when I finally realized that doing the right thing is something that benefits me, it's the what's in it for me thing, right?
Yeah.
And I used to think, well, I'm doing this for Jesus. And because I thought that way, even as a Christian before I came to Torah, I was doing it for Jesus. And so then I thought, well, now he owes me. Now he's indebted to me. I didn't quite say it that way, but
it's almost like the prosperity gospel where you give to get.
That's right. Yeah. But I thought I was doing it the way I was supposed to. You know, I was being a good Christian boy. I was, you know, making daddy happy, you know.
Right.
And, you know, but it's like when the little kid, you teach your little kids to look both ways when they cross the street. Are you happy when they do it? Of course you are, you know, but why? And I told my kids this. I'm like, look, I want you guys to look both ways. And here's the deal. If you do, I'll be very happy, right? And if you don't, you'll be dead. Okay. So
there's a benefit.
The reason is not to please me. It's not to please me. It's to keep you alive. And it was great. You know, I gave them accolades when they were 3 and 4.
Yeah.
But when they're, you know, 20, well, I'm not going to say anything anymore. I gave it for you. It wasn't for me that you're looking both ways. It's for you. And you are the direct beneficiary of doing it or not doing it. And when I finally understood that, when I finally understood there's a Sabbath, it's for me. I'm the direct beneficiary of keeping it or not keeping it. I'm not doing it for dad. I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
And when I eat clean, it's not because I want to please my Father. I mean, yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, of course I do.
Yeah.
But that's not the main reason. The main priority is to be healthy, you know, and right. And the reason I don't murder people, not just because I want to please Jesus. No, it's because like, well, it ruins your whole life when you do that. And the other person's life too, you know. And so I don't want to do those things, not simply for him, but primarily for me. And yes, there's a smile on his face when I keep his ways.
Yeah.
But that's not the reason. And it's taken all this pressure off me. I'm not trying to score points with Jesus. I'm not trying to, you know, get some entry in the well done, good and faithful servant book. I mean, I hope he says it, but it's changed my perspective. And now I can just, man, I'm not stressed anymore. I feel freedom. I feel so alive. And even before I came to Torah, I was under this whole sense of guilt, of obligation, massive obligation, that I better do this for Jesus or else.
Well, yeah. Back in the church, you know, before the Sunday church, we would be like, okay, you got to be praying enough, you got to be studying enough. If you haven't prayed enough, if you hadn't studied enough, if you hadn't done your praise and worship right, you know, and I came from the charismatic background. If you hadn't been lifting up your hands enough or whatever,
Right.
You're not where you need to be. And those things are good to do.
Sure.
But why are we doing them? The same thing.
Yeah.
And I really like that perspective. I like how you put that.
Well, I think of like the seraphim that are before God day and night, and they're saying Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So there's two different ways you can look at it, maybe more, but one is that God kind of wound them up and they're just on autopilot. Kadosh, Kadosh, right?
Right.
Or, I mean, actually, maybe there's three ways. The third is, we better keep saying this so that we please God.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Or they're saying it because they're overwhelmed. I think it's the latter.
I agree,
think they look at God and they're like, holy, 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 right? And then 5 minutes later, they're like, oh my goodness, like, oh my God. And they just say, holy, holy, holy. I think they are continually in this state of climax, and they're just like, they're overwhelmed by the grandeur, the beauty, the power, the magnificence of this being that they are face to face with. And they can't stop but say, holy, holy, holy. They're not doing it to get points. They're not doing it because God put them on auto. They're just overwhelmed, and they're continually, perpetually overwhelmed, and they're happy, right? Because it's like when you see that sunset and you're like, wow, that is gorgeous, or you see that amazing painting, or you hear that song and you're just like, I want to listen to it again and again, because it is so moving that you just can't help yourself. And I think that's where they are, and they're in this continual state of bliss, and all they can do is say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh.
Oh, I like that.
The
scripture says, oh, magnify the Lord with me, let us exalt his name together. And I think that is, magnifying Yehovah, Yah. God, look, God is God. He can't get any bigger than he is. He's
right.
But to us, he can be bigger in our life. And I think that's what you're saying there with the seraphim, that continuously they're getting that revelation. They're magnifying it to Yah to them, and it's just continual. I think that's what we're going to be doing for all eternity. That's amazing. So oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that great?
You talk about, so I want to flip back to some other books that you wrote, because they touch in. I have a trilogy that's the Watchers trilogy. It starts off with before Adam. It goes to the Watcher of the Nephilim, giant walk through history, and then the end is the beginning. It starts from the beginning of time, ends at the end of time. You kind of you focus on the Millennial Chronicles. I really enjoy that. Was probably some of the first stuff that I read of yours. And then recently you came out with the Regenesis Code. Talk a little bit about that, because I did kind of some of the same stuff. I wanted to teach some of these doctrines, but I like the idea of painting a picture. Back in the corporate world, we called it White Rabbit. We wanted to, when we're selling something, we wanted to paint a picture. When I say white rabbit, you think of a white rabbit. If I say a dog, you may be thinking of a German Shepherd. I'm thinking of a miniature Dachshund that's got speckles. So we want to paint that picture of what the end times, what all this stuff looks like. And we know that, hey, we could be off a little bit. We're not being dogmatic. But talk to me a little bit about Regenesis Code and the Millennial Chronicles. I love how you do this with a story format.
Thank you. Yeah. I think kind of the days of felt graphs is over, right? Or PowerPoints, right? I went to a lot of conferences. I was in the conferences. I did tons of PowerPoints. And here was my mistake. I kept thinking it was about more data. I thought if I give you enough verses, if I can paint this picture with information, then you're going to have to become a true believer. That's kind of where I was. And, I finally saw the light. I'm like, oh, people are emotional, right? And they just want a good story, and that's what it is. And now, obviously, you want your story to be based in reality, or the reality of Scripture, as much as we can, of course.
Right.
But so what I did with Regenesis Code was I took all the things that I had written in Corrupting the Image 1, 2, and 3. I took the starting back in the garden, where God says there'll be enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. That's what got me started on writing Corrupting the Image, because I'm like, what? Her seed? Your seed? What are we talking about here?
Right.
And I uncovered this whole genetic thing. It leads to the Nephilim, etc. And, it's funny because I thought I had written all I needed to write in Corrupting Image 1.
Yes.
Then I was like, oh, there's so much more to say, right? And then
So
I wrote
much more. Yeah.
a huge tome, right? I mean,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, 108,000 words. I don't know what I was thinking, but
Yep.
and then I did Corrupting Image 3 because there's just more.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to put it into a story format because when you think about it, the return of Yeshua has got to be the most epic story that there ever was.
Yeah.
I love Tolkien. I really do. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But if we actually take the same time and the same discipline to look at the scriptures and to not cut corners, to dig deep, and you're going to find an amazing story. Now, I'm not saying I can write as good as Tolkien because he's amazing, but what a storyteller. But God's an amazing storyteller.
Yeah.
And so I tried to take those ideas and to put them in a story that's going to make a lot more sense. And obviously the Left Behind series, they sold 65 million books. They did pretty good.
Yeah.
But they started with the wrong premise, in my humble opinion. They started with the rapture, and it was very dispensational in its understanding. And this idea that God is angry with the world. I have been reformulating everything as a love story. In fact, I have another book coming out in October. It's called Immortal Dawn. And it's taking some of these similar ideas. It's nonfiction, but I include a few vignettes just to give the reader some breathing room and to imagine what this theology looks like.
Yeah.
And, the return of Christ is not, he's a bit angry, no doubt about it. The wrath of God.
Right.
But why is he wrathful? Well, because you've been beating up his wife. That's why.
Yeah.
And, and he's kind of angry about that, So yeah, he definitely has a bone to pick with Satan, no doubt about it. But when I was in Calvary Chapel, I kept hearing that, Christ is going to pour out his wrath on a Christ rejecting world. And it sounds like God is just angry because you didn't say yes to Jesus. But God is angry because Satan and all those who follow him are trying to keep people in the dark. They're trying to keep us under bondage. They're trying to keep us in this place of servitude. When God is saying, no, I came to give you life and more abundantly. I came to bring light, and I want you to be the light. And the kingdom of darkness, Satan's kingdom of darkness, is ultimately keeping us imprisoned, is keeping us in pain, in sorrow, depression, you name it. And so, yeah, Jesus is going to come and rectify that. But it's the final chapter of a love story. And so I wanted to write a book that would frame all of that in a different way. And part of the challenge was to come up with a plausible world scenario. All right. So my hero, his name is Caleb Baruch. He's Israeli Special Forces. And, America is not the hero. Okay. I read some of these books. I'm like, how is America the hero? Why are we so ethnocentric that we think that, we've got to save the day? It's not us, guys. It's about Israel.
It's all about Israel.
The modern state of Israel. And yes, we as believers who are grafted into Israel for sure. But so I started there. And I try to take different things. For example, in Isaiah 19, it talks about how Damascus is going to be destroyed. It's going to become a ruinous heap. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, what might that look like? Real boots on the ground. What could that actually look like? And so I came up with the idea of a dirty nuke where that Damascus gets rubbled. Sorry, spoiler alert if you're going to read the book, but Damascus is going to be blown up and it's going to be blamed on the modern state of Israel. And in the book, I won't go into all of it, obviously, but, in the book, the Israeli army is trying to do something good, and then it all just turns bad and it looks bad. And so then it's kind of like dominoes, right? Once that first domino is knocked over, then we have the UFO alien thing because, there are many testimonies of UFOs showing up over nuclear sites and taking the missiles offline for 5, 10 minutes or hours just to prove that they can. And so I'm trying to take all of this stuff that we've actually seen in the real world and put it into a story so that you're like, oh, I get it. And then I have the two witnesses show up. And I think the two witnesses are going to be viewed as hostile aliens. So, it's flip the script. Okay, that's what we're going to see. And that's what I'm going to talk about in Immortal Dawn as well, when that book comes out in October. It's flipping the script so that the good guys are the bad guys are the good guys. And I think when the two witnesses come and they, basically say, God's coming, he's going to reestablish his kingdom. The world says, no, thank you. We're not interested. And the two witnesses have real power. They have power to stop it from raining for 3.5 years. And if you don't have rain for 3.5 years worldwide, well, guess what? That leads to forest fires. That leads to drought. That leads to rocketing food prices. And they can turn water to blood as, whenever they like. They can strike the earth with plagues with often as they like. They can also call fire down from heaven. And so nobody will be able to stop them. They'll be that powerful until one guy shows up, the beast, who is imbued with Satan's power. And, so that's kind of the theological backdrop to the book. But I wanted to not just say it in Bible speak, I wanted to take that and then put it, okay, how might this be received? I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you this is what it will be. But I tried to do it in a way that the world would already accept such terminology. The world would already, and has already proven that they're open to such terminology. And I think we see it in the movies as well. I mean, the Avengers movies, those are some of my all-time favorites. And, we see there that there's this hostile threat coming to the world. And guess what? The world's heroes all band together to fight against this evil force that's coming. Well,
I think we're already being set up with the Avengers. I think
exactly.
They're the good guys, and they're Nephilim. And the good. So I love how you did that. The end is the beginning. I did a lot of that same stuff, a little bit different view, but I like in the novelizations that I do, I'm able to take some of the concepts that when we try to preach or teach just from the scripture, it's a little rough. Like one thing in my Before Adam book, I wanted to show God living on the outside of our time domain. And so I have a scene in there where I have an angel coming up the mountain of God to come into the throne room, and he's passing Gabriel, and Gabriel's muttering about, I've got to go talk to Miriam and about this Yeshua. And this angel is going up saying, hey, look, Daniel's praying right now. So we've got two things outside of time happening in the same. Anyway, so I write. That's what I really enjoy about writing the novelization part. You're able to teach some concepts that are just kind of and you want to make it real for people because it is real.
Right. And novelization is always tricky because, especially if you're talking with an extreme Bible purist, it's got to be the King James only, and we can't deviate from that.
If it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. I got
that's right. What I found when I was writing both the Millennium Chronicles and Regenesis Code is when I freed myself from the straitjacket of that strict Bible interpretation, and I would consider myself a very I'm someone who stays close to the text. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
That when I was able to just imagine, use a little bit of holy imagination, say, what might this look like? Boots on the ground. Because what you do, it's easy to just have your prophecy chart and so here's the bullet points. That's easy. But when you have to start putting flesh on this thing, say, okay, how might this really look in the real world? That's when all these other questions rise up that you never had thought of before. You're like, well, gosh, I never thought about that.
Well, and like when I was writing The End is the Beginning, I'm making my outline for the book, and my book follows like that one starts off at the end of my Nephilim book where the Antichrist is revealed. I think that's going to be like a Nimrod type figure, Nephilim. Anyway, so, but I'm writing out my outline, and I'm like, okay, I want to talk about this in Bible prophecy. I want to talk about this. And I'm pulling all of these things together. And Doug, when I'm starting to write, I'm like, I am overwhelmed. I'm like, there is so much that's got to fit. How does that all fit together? What does that look like? And talk about that a little bit, because that's
Right.
that's a very daunting task.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You know, and when I did Millennium Chronicles, that was my first novel ever, and there were so many pieces I was trying to put together. I really wanted to, you know, stay close to the text. I actually footnoted a novel. Whoever does that, right? But I did.
Yeah.
I know, I'm crazy. But yeah, I footnoted my novel because I just wanted to say, look, I'm not making this stuff up. Yeah, I'm
Right.
making up the
Dialogue.
characters, of course, right?
Yeah.
The dialogue, right? But
Yeah.
but it's all based on biblical kind of stuff. And you know, the millennium is one of these areas where a lot of end times teachers, you know, we get to the rapture or the return of Christ, and then we're done, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
more thought of what happens thereafter.
Right.
And yet the millennium is this incredibly exciting time. It
Mhm.
is where God is going to give humanity, you know, kind of the final chapter. And there
Yeah.
will be mortals and immortals that will be
Yes.
on the earth at that time. People will still have to come to Jesus, not in a spiritual kind of sense, but they'll have to put their shoes on and go up to Jerusalem, very
Yeah.
literally. You know, and I thought that was really just, you know, an interesting thought, but it was so fun to try to imagine what the earth would be like at that point. And, you know, you know, people love to just throw comments at you and they want a soundbite. They're like, oh, that's not what it says. I'm like, yeah, okay. I wrote a lot about that. I think I might know something about it because scripture says a ton about it.
Yeah.
But what happens is people just assume that, well, it doesn't really mean that. I mean, I was reading this commentary by Albert Barnes and the audacity he had. He said, well, Isaiah was confused about the time of the millennium. And I'm like,
What?
um,
Oh my gosh.
okay. You
Yeah.
know, because here's the deal. Isaiah talks about the new heavens and the earth, and that there will still be death, potential death during
Yeah.
that time, that people
Yeah.
will be building houses during that time. And then if you look at Revelation, how it's been traditionally interpreted by the church is that all of that happens, you know, later. And, you know, so the conclusion I came to, and I don't know where you stand on this, but my conclusion is that the new heavens and earth happen in conjunction with the return of Christ, because the world is absolutely trashed at that point. All the waters have turned to blood. The mountains have fallen down. You know, it's devastated.
Yeah.
And it says that the elements are going to burn with fervent heat. I'm like, well, that sounds like a pretty nasty place to live on, you know?
Yeah.
So no matter how you slice it, Jesus has to restore the earth. And I'm like, I think that the new heavens and earth come shortly thereafter. Let's say the beginning of the millennium.
Yeah.
That is when the earth is restored to its Edenic conditions.
Mm.
And that's it. There is no brand new heavens and earth after that.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that was one of those things that as I was writing that, I was contemplating it. I was like, this just makes more sense, you know? And then the story, of course, came from that to see how it might all, you know, flesh out. And then lastly, of course, it, you know, this is ultimately much of the Bible is a story about the bad guy, right? Every story, every good story has a bad guy, and that's what makes it exciting. And when you just think of the Bible as story, well, there you go. You have this amazing villain. And when he's put into the abyss at the return of Christ, that's not the end of the story.
Right.
That is a punctuation in the story for sure, but it's not the end of the story. Yeah. Because he's going to have one last breath. He's going to get out. He's going to go and deceive the nations. And, you know, so I was trying to imagine, I'm like, what might this be like? What is the motivation? How could people fall for this after so many good years?
Yeah.
How could they possibly fall into this trap? And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun to write that book as well, and to just imagine what these things might look like.
So you write, you have a series, Corrupting the Image, volume 1, 2, and 3. I do a lot of that in my the Nephilim, a giant walk through history, and showing a transformation from the Watchers having the hybrid beings back before the flood, and then showing them, you know, kind of pulling from Enoch a little bit with the dead Nephilim, those spirits becoming the demons and things like that. So, and then I show the working of the demons through that time, through present time. You know, Jesus dealt with demons. Today in our sophisticated churches, we just tell them to go take Prozac. So, but I talk about that all the way through, and some of the stuff with the novelization, I'm like in Joshua, I'm showing when Israel is crossing the Jordan, I'm doing it from the point of the Nephilim tribes, looking at these tiny little guys carrying this golden box, and when it hits the river, it stands up and it shoots all the way back, So, and they're freaking out, So, but I think it's an important thing. I love the work that you did on corrupting the image 1, 2, and 3. I like all of them, but 2 is probably my favorite. You get into Enlil, and that blew my mind. I took some of that work and actually went back and referenced some of the changes because, man, I think that you are 100% on. Talk a little bit about how corrupting the image came into being 1, 2, and 3. You can talk about all of them, but where did that start with?
Yeah, so book 1 was me trying to understand the Nephilim, how we got there. I look at Genesis 3:15 with the whole thing about the seed. So corrupting the image 1 is really a deep dive into the genetics of how this could work. And I contrast the seed of the woman, obviously Jesus, and the genetics of the incarnation as opposed to the genetics of the Antichrist, the beast.
Okay.
And like I said, I thought I was done, but then, of course, as you keep studying, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much more. So in corrupting the image 2, I was looking at Revelation, and I thought, okay, so Satan is a dragon. Okay, but why? Why is he called a great red dragon? Why is there a woman riding a beast? Why is there a beast?
Right.
What do you mean there the beast that was, is not, and will ascend out of the abyss?
Right.
And so I just had to go back and just dig deeper. And in my studies, I discovered that Enlil is a word that we find in Isaiah 14:12, where it says, "Oh, Halel, how you have fallen from heaven." Usually it's translated as Lucifer, but that's really a misnomer. There is no Lucifer. There was never a Lucifer. You'll never find that in ancient history. But Enlil, you will, and you find him all over the place.
That's
He's
amazing.
all over ancient Sumer. And Enlil was the one who separated heaven and earth. He took earth as his portion. Anu, the creator god, was essentially out of the loop. Enlil took the Anu ship, that authority that was originally Anu's. He took it unto himself. He had the tablet of destinies by which he could decree fates over mankind. I'm like, this is totally Satan, and when you start seeing it from that perspective, it changes the whole outlook. And then I kept digging, and I discovered that it's hard to explain a little bit, but there was this thing called a logogram that was kind of like the golden arches, right? The golden arches to McDonald's. Okay.
Yeah.
So think of a logogram as what Satan or Enlil's name would have been displayed as.
Okay.
And the name of that was Bad, B-A-D. But then the way it was pronounced was Ug. And Ug means death, enmity. And I'm like, wait a second, and I'm like, how would that sound in Hebrew, right? So I did all my studies, and it's Og, right? Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
King Og, right?
Yeah. And then we have from the Ugaritic text, they talk about how Mount Hermon was the headquarters of a god of death, Ug, okay, whose headquarters were at Ashtoreth and Edrei. I'm like, that's exactly what it says about King Og.
Right.
And I'm like, why Bashan? Bashan is actually from the Akkadian Bashmu. It's a snake dragon or a dragon snake. It's another epithet for Enlil. It's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And this whole idea of a snake, right? The word Nachash in Hebrew is related to another variation, which is called a mushchushu. The mushchushu you'll find on the Ishtar gate. Right. It is a great red dragon, and it literally means great red dragon in Sumerian. It's the Ushumgalu. I'm like, oh my goodness, right?
So this imagery that we're seeing from the prophets and everybody, it's not this brand new idea. It's something they lived with, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was just like that was just seeing logos. They would see the golden arches. You see Starbucks, right? You see all these different things, and you're like, that's just living in this society. That's what it was back then. You saw the great red dragon all over the place. You saw the woman riding the beast all over the place. So these are not new ideas. It's not the Catholic Church. It's just what they were living with in those days. And of course, God is pulling back the curtain. He says, okay, this is what they say it is, but here's what it really is.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting. Even in Revelation chapter 5, where there's a scroll at the Father's right hand, I think that is the tablet of destinies.
Wow.
And John is weeping because nobody's found worthy to open this thing. It's essentially, it's the dominion that God gave to Adam, and then Adam squandered it and he gave it to Satan. And, so when Jesus shows up, Satan says, hey, Jesus, I know you're here to save humanity. We don't need to fight about this. I'll give it to you, man. I'll just give it to you. Just bow down. No big deal. I'll give you what you came for.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a trap. Jesus doesn't go for it.
Yeah.
But so he does what he has to do. It's a legal battle. It's a legal battle, not a who is stronger, who's got bigger guns battle, but it's a legal battle. And so Jesus did what is legally necessary to buy it back. And that is why he's the only one found worthy. And so then he can take that scroll, that tablet of destinies, and now he has authority, all authority in heaven and earth, all authority over death and Hades, right?
Yeah.
He bought it. And that's what's so cool. I think that's the Mission Impossible part of the story, where, he has to go undercover and he can't tell everybody what he's about to do, or it wouldn't work, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let me run this by you real quick. And I know you're running low on time. Let me. Do you think that John was doing by the Spirit? John was doing the same thing that Moses was doing. Moses was correcting the popular theology of the day from the Sumerian, the Anunnaki side, the fallen angels, their religion, their mystery religions that they're spreading. Moses was sent. God dictates Genesis to him and sets the record straight. Do you think the Holy Spirit was doing the same thing with John, with that revelation, that he's correcting the end time script with the tablet of destinies, with all these imagery that they were familiar with? Is that a fair statement?
Well, I don't know if he was so much correcting as God was giving him insight, because for John, what happened in Sumer was just as far back as us to John, right?
Oh, that's true.
It was a huge amount of time. Yeah. And it obviously there was Ashtoreth and there was Astarte, so he would have been familiar with some of these things, maybe not to the same extent, but I think for me, it's more of a confirmation that what these ancient Sumerians saw and what John saw are one and the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that tells me that what the ancient Sumerians were seeing was legit, and God is giving an insight, a revelation to John about what those symbols meant. And, and how exactly, how well he knew them exactly, I don't know, but they may have been in the collective memory for sure. Yeah. But it's a confirmation that those ancient symbols, the beast, the dragon, all of those are in fact pointing us back to the Tower of Babel and beyond, where we find Satan, Enlil, and all of that ancient story. So it puts us in massive perspective for us. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Oh man,
that's awesome. That's awesome. I know I've heard of some people taking a particular type of hallucinant drug, and they're all seeing this same type of imagery when they do that. So, and I'm wondering, because we see like in the Temple of Delphi,
ayahuasca. They take ayahuasca.
Right. Yeah. So like in the Temple of Delphi, they're huffing that stuff and then having these ecstatic tongues and giving these prophecies and stuff. So I think that just opened it up to the real spiritual world, maybe stuff that we're not supposed to see or whatever, and they're seeing it from a slanted view, where the fallen angels are like, hey, we're the good guys, and that Yah guy, he's the bad guy. We see the same thing today. We have so many people attacking. And look, I don't care what you call it. I say Jehovah. I know some people say Yahuwah or Yahweh. Whatever. We see people attacking God, who we call God, as the devil, and Jesus is a false. He's a false deity. It's the same thing going on and on, over and over and over.
There's a very strange doctrine that Yud He Vav He, regardless of the pronunciation, some people are saying that Yud He Vav He is the devil, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's so ridiculous. But that's it for another day, another show. Oh my gosh! Thank you, Jeff. I'm so glad I could be here. Appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed it. I'll pop this up again, guys. If you want to go find Dr. Hamp's books, go get them. They are phenomenal. I've read not all of your books, but I've read a lot of them, and I appreciate your work. I appreciate your time. As an author, I know what it is to my poor wife. She is like, when I start writing, it's like, she has to make an appointment with me to come see me. So I get it. Guys, go subscribe over at Dr. Hamp's channel. It's at youtube.com @DougHamp. Thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you. You're such a blessing. I love to have you on. You're always so fun to have. But do you have a final word before we end?
I would just encourage people, just know that God loves you, right? And don't be a Torah terrorist. Just let's bless people, right? Let's be the light that Jesus wants us to be.
I love it. All right. Thank you, Dr. Hamp. Guys, we'll see you later. This Wednesday night, we're going to have Jeremy Pyers on. He's going to be talking about his book, but it's going to be fun stuff. So we'll see you later. Thank you, Dr. Hamp. And shalom, everybody. Amen.